Hello everyone, I'm Ján and this is Vladimír, and today we would like to tell you something about our newest game called Beat Saber. We are from a company called Beat Games, but many of you might know us as a Hyperbolic Magnetism. We changed the name or somehow split the company for two companies, or we just came up with another person who joined us, which is Jaroslav, and we created just this new company. But our histories goes well beyond this point. We started with a game called Looms a few years ago. It was on iOS and it was a total fail. We spent like 3 years working on that game and sold just around 10,000 copies or something like that. But a few years ago, fortunately, we made this game called Chameleon Run, and it went better because we won the Apple Design Award. And now suddenly we are just two people, and we have this PlayStation bundle with Borderlands 2, which is a completely crazy thing. And today we would like to tell you something about how all this happened and how we managed to create that game. Many VR developers are trying to make a game in VR just because VR is cool, or they maybe thought there are some money in the VR like a few years ago, but that's not our case. Actually, we never wanted to make anything for VR. I just bought HTC Vive and I wanted to try some games, play some games. And I tried Audio Shield and other rhythm games, and I was a little bit how would I say that? I was expecting something more or something different. So I realized I want to make a game myself. So I turned on Unity and created this simple prototype where you can cut cubes. It took me like 3 hours. And I already felt, wow, this is nice. Cutting things in VR is almost as satisfying as cutting things in a normal life. So let's make a game about that. And usually when we have these basic concepts, I start making some visuals. So first thing was really easy. We don't want any textures. We don't want any complicated geometry because we can't do that. So I started creating things like this. This is actually probably the first visuals we had like 2 weeks after when we started. Then it looked like this, and this was almost the final version. And when we were like 3 or 5 months in development, we already showcased the game on some conferences. But then a global game jam happened. And we really loved making game jams. So we went there and we made this game called Splashy Bunnies. And we thought, okay, Splashy Bunnies is much better than Beat Saber. So we just stopped working on Beat Saber and worked on this game because it was much better, right? But then we realized, okay, it's not so good. So we went back to Beat Saber. And we started to showcase the game even more. We showcased it on GDS. Even Dan Vavra played it, and he didn't like it too much. But he doesn't like VR games, that's too much. But then we created a trailer for the game. It looked like this. One interesting thing about this trailer is that we don't have any motion capture devices. So this is actually me playing with just HTC Vive controllers, and I have 2 controllers on my feet. This was really nice. Actually, the tracking was not so bad, so it was great. And when we released this trailer, amazing thing happened. This guy, Jaroslav Beck, one of the most famous producers of music trailers for AA games, called us and asked us if he can work with us together. So I was like, okay, you were the only guy in the world we were thinking about to cooperate with. We actually wanted to call him, so when he called us, we were very happy, and we just right now he's part of the company, so the things went very well. And he made some music for the game. And then the really important thing happened. We didn't plan any big marketing because VR was small back then. It's small right now. So we thought, okay, we will just send some press statements to the press guys, and they will just write about the game because there are no other games. But we did some Twitter marketing like we did always, and I just released one small tweet. This is the tweet which started everything. And you know, I had like 2,000 followers on Twitter, and suddenly this tweet has like 400,000 views and almost 20,000 likes, which was crazy. Yeah. And then our friends from Liv created this video, and it went viral. Just this one has over 40 million views on Facebook, and together this is how the video looked like. And together we estimate there were like 400 million views across the Facebook and Twitter and all the social networks. And then we released the game on May 1st. But before we continue, we'll tell you something about how we developed the game. So Vladimír can continue probably.
Yeah. So we are working with standard 6 degrees of freedom devices when you can actually move and rotate devices and everything is tracked. This is totally different from like mobile phones when they only detect rotation and stuff. And basically, I would say it's really different from what we've been doing before. Now when I am in our office and I see, for example, my brother working next to me and Ján behind me, and someone come to the office, everybody see like persons wearing VR headsets and doing something inside. And it's really about the comfort. I mean, right now you would really want to do some design in the VR, but on the next minute you would really want to do some programming on your monitor. So it's really it's really looking like this. You want to play the game, but you don't want to stand because you are lazy. And that's why early in the development we designed something which will help us to make this process smoother, and we call this replay and record. So basically, one person record the gameplay of the Beat Saber, then the gameplay will be played only in the Unity editor, and you can see everything, how it's or what's going on from the first person or third person camera without even wearing headset. You can pause the game in the middle and adjust stuff, and it's really convenient. So I recommend to any developers try to make this solution for you too. So continuing about the VR, so there are many technical issues regarding the hardware and regarding the stuff what's going on in the headset. One of the main thing we are dealing right now is problem about the resolution and about aliasing. In VR, like everything is 10 times more pronounced, and specifically the low resolution of the displays makes you feel like you are not really immersed in the environment. And when you are not really immersed in the environment, even if your game is like super fun, it doesn't work at all. So we try to work around those issues. Specifically with the aliasing, we do 4 times MSAA, which also I try to recommend to everybody. Don't be afraid to use this. Even like graphics cards, which are not the high end, can maintain that level of anti-aliasing. But because of this specific hardware anti-aliasing feature, we can't use some rendering techniques like deferred rendering, which is really useful for environments with many lights. In the beginning of development for the Beat Saber, we imagined that our our environment would have many lights, many neon lights, and it would be really convenient to use deferred rendering. But because we would also need to use this MSAA anti-aliasing, it's not possible. So that's why we do only forward rendering. So basically, in our game, we don't use like standard light, and everything is custom. So those two things can coexist together without any performance hit. This is really important, specifically in a VR game. You don't really want to have any like frame drops, because when you try to VR, there are like some issues, and one of the issues is about the frame rate. If the frame rate is not stable and you have the frame drops, you can like get sick pretty soon, and this is something we don't want anybody to experience, because when you experience motion sickness on anything like it with the VR game, you would never ever like try this game later. You will never ever recommend this game to anybody else. You will never like believe in this hardware, and we don't want this to happen. So we really think about the performance every single day and want to maintain this 90 frames per second. You may be saying 90 frames per second, it's no big deal. I'm playing my, I don't know, Battlefield 120 or I don't know. But imagine this, not everybody has like the latest and greatest NVIDIA or AMD GPU which is costing like $1,000 or something. Basically, right now, the VR ecosystem is not that big. It's because not everybody has the graphics card to render 90 frames per second. And also imagine this, like normally games render in a like full HD resolution, but nowadays the helmets are much larger in terms of resolution, and you are basically rendering twice for each eye. Speaking of the resolution, this is also like good thing that the resolution is not so big, because like I said, you would need like pretty expensive graphics card to run, I don't know, like 8K or something like that. But because we have this problem, the resolution is small, but we can still empower some other techniques to make the image more clearer with the supersampling. Supersampling is basically rendering the image in higher resolution than the native displays. But if you have not so good graphics card, you can do this. But it's interesting that, for example, in PlayStation, I will talk about this maybe later. The PlayStation HMD doesn't have so big resolution, but the GPU in the console is like rather good for these types of things. And like most of the games on the PlayStation render on super sampling level 1.4, and with the Pro version of the PlayStation, you can go even higher. And by that, everything is much more sharper and especially text.
Okay, I continue. Another big issue is flickering. In VR, we usually notice any small detail, and when you are moving your head and something is flickering somewhere, it is really disrupting. And in normal games, we usually use nowadays a temporal anti-aliasing, which is not very suitable for VR because it makes everything look softer. So this is one of the issues we had to we have to find some solutions to, and we actually I'm not even sure what we did. We spent a lot of time tweaking the bloom, for example, and just making sure any specular reflections are not very crisp and so on. So everything is more smooth, but still crisp on edges. Another thing is bending. Bending is very problematic, because you can see it maybe here, but in VR, if there's some bending and you are moving your head, you see how the bending is moving with you, which completely ruins the experience. And another things are game design issues. In VR, there's motion sickness. A lot of people can't play VR games because they feel sick. Actually, I'm one of them. If I'm playing any VR game where someone moves with the camera, I'm like, I can play it like for 5 seconds and I'm done. Another thing is limited movement. As I said, you shouldn't move the player. Also, limited feedback. You can't tell player not to go into the wall. If there's a wall, they can go through it. If there's some enemy, you can put your hand inside any enemy. There's no way how to stop that. So these are all game design issues you have to think about. And also, this is one of the first trailers. We had a lot of particles there, and this might feel very overwhelming to the players. So in normal games, we are usually trying to make them as juicy as possible, to add a lot of particles, a lot of effects. If you put this into any VR game, it starts to feel like really like a mess. So you have to be really more clearly about that.
So early on, we decided to use the Unity engine just because we had pretty good experience creating previous games, and also when we started development in 2016, there was already some nice features already integrated in the Unity. Previously, when you tried DK1 or other stuff, you would need to integrate their SDK, but now, when you start the Unity, there is already good integration for both major SDKs from the Steam VR / OpenVR and also on the Oculus. So pretty much everything works out of the box. You just need to enable for the camera. You just need to enable one flag that the camera needs to render to your eyes, and everything start working from that point. So when you start the game, with your headset plugged in, everything is rendered to the headset. Headset is tracked and is automatically moving the camera.
There's just one problem in Unity, that Unity doesn't support rendering into the texture in stereo rendering. So once you set the rendering texture into any camera, it's just a simple monoscopic rendering. The good thing about Unity is also that it supports single-pass stereo rendering, which means this is two-pass stereo rendering, which just renders left eye and the right eye, and this is the single-pass stereo rendering, where objects are rendered at the same time in both eyes.
And it means that it's saves you to send the complex geometry to the GPUs twice.
Yes, and this is actually, we just check this on and it works almost. You just need to tweak some effects and all this stuff. We also use a lot of built-in features. We are not trying to use many specific SDKs. So as much as Unity can support it, we are using it from Unity. So for example, for getting tracking for hands and so on. But the biggest problem is this.
Yeah, things like haptics. I mean, the force feedback from the controls are not really implemented natively in Unity. So when you want to have a feedback, you need to call the specific functions for the specific from the specific SDK, and that's a really problem, because when you want to have the same experience across all platforms, I mean all platforms and all hardwares, it's not really possible, because on Vive, I mean, on the Steam VR SDK, there is this function you see on the screen, where the second parameter is how long should the vibration last, but it's not really what we want to do. For the Oculus SDK, there is actually very, very fancy API where you can play the audio clip in the VR motor, so it's much more fancier. But when you design the game, you always design it across the lowest common stuff. So that's really complicated. And the next level would be considering also API on the PlayStation, which is of course something different. So even though we try to use native implementation as much as possible, things like that, it's not possible, and you need to get it from native SDK.
Yeah. Another thing is UI. Unity doesn't support any VR UI, which means if you want to have some kind of pointer, you have to write your own graphic raycaster and input module. Fortunately, the source code of Unity UI is available, so there is not a big problem to rewrite it and write this stuff, but it takes some time. Right now, the Oculus released their SDK, which has this built-in, so you might use that. Let's dive into Beat Saber then. So we start with rendering. From the beginning, we wanted to have these laser lights all around, but there's no way how to really compute the visuals these laser lights will have in real life. So we came up with a fake thing called fake volumetric fog, which works just like a normal forward fog rendering, but instead of having a single color fog or color gradient, We actually have all these lights like this, and we render them on really low resolution as sprites or box. They are all the same size, and they have actually they are anti-aliased on the edges just because those are just sprites. And then we just blur them like really a lot and even more, and then we just combine some blurs together, and we just apply that in forward rendering on the geometry, which is like totally fake, but it looks kind of good for lasers which are away from you. If there's a laser near you, that actually looks really bad, but we don't have any of those in the game, so it's kind of okay. We use Kawasa blur. Many of you might know that. It's just a technique for blurring, multipass rendering technique. Instead of having separable blur, it takes a lot of passes, but the interpolators of the GPU are really put into this, so we are always fetching just four texture. We have 4 texture fetches in each fragment, and we actually interpolate 16 pixels there. The results are almost as nice as Gaussian blur, but it's much faster on PC and PlayStation. It might not be as good on mobile devices because of texture resolves. The other thing is bloom. I already said something about that before. Normal bloom, which is built in Unity or it's in standard effects pack, doesn't look good in VR at all. It actually, if you look on thin line, it really flickers, and you can see all that movement. It's because they are just making a pyramid of blurs, and we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to make really full resolution blurs, and we used the Kawasa blur tool. The good thing about Kawasa blur is that there are some shared
steps.
Shared steps, so we can recycle them, and the final result is much better. Actually, we use alpha channel to mark the geometry which should be blooming, which is kind of like a very old technique, but it works perfectly in our game. So this is just the alpha channel, and all the stuff which is white will bloom in the end.
Normally, you would use something like HDR textures, I mean HDR textures, but in our case, we want to like save on the bandwidth and stuff.
Yeah.
So we are using like a standard like 8-bit per pixel texture. So that's why we are like abusing the alpha channel, because in our game we don't really have like a transparent geometry, or the transparent geometry can be drawn after the opaque pass. So
yeah. Actually, this usually can make some problems with standard shaders you are using, but if you have the source code, there's no problem to just tweak the blend function and change how the alpha is handled. The other thing I already said something about is bending. If you have a gradient like this going from RGB 00100 to RGB 0080, it might look really bad. Actually, this is the zoomed in thing. And as I said, this really looks really crappy in VR, because when you are moving your head, you see all those lines moving with you. It's really bad. So the solution for this is quite easy, because in shaders you are usually working with high precision values. The problem happens when the signal is quantized on the output. So just this one line of code adding blue noise to the resulted color solves almost everything. This is actually the one line of code we have there, and we have it in multiple steps. If we are rendering some particles, if we are rendering the background, especially the background and the fog, it's very very helpful. And this is how the final signal looks like. So as you see, we have in this picture there are like 5 colors, but the bending is gone, and you still can see the gradient.
And also, like, I recommend this blue noise thing regarding the bending in all games you are working on, because it's nothing is worse than you have a pretty nice game or very, very good game, fancy asset and everything, and then you look at the some part of the geometry where you see bending, and it's really, really easy to
remove. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember when I learned this technique, and I was playing Firewatch game. You might know that. And if you look on the skybox of this Firewatch now, you won't be able to play the game anymore. Let's talk about architecture.
Yeah, so we are using Unity, so we try to work with what's native in the Unity, and one thing which is there is our scenes. So in our game, we have many scenes. Maybe you would expect Beat Saber would need only two, one for menu and one for the game. In Beat Saber, we have 5 scenes for the actual gameplay, because we would like to recycle scenes for slightly different types of gameplay. For example, in our current build, we have standard level when you play the level normally as you would, and also in the PlayStation build there is the campaign, where you basically also playing the song and the level, but there are other things like you need to clear the objectives and stuff. But because of those scenes being different, basically, you would need to either create 2 almost complete copies, but it's really impossible to maintain, or you somehow divide the scenes into multiple scenes and try to use it across different usages.
Yeah, the reason why we have multiple scenes like this is that if you have a game on Steam VR and you drop some frames, which usually happens during loading, it automatically shows you the Steam VR background or something like that. So you never wanted to spend more than I don't know, 30 milliseconds on the main thread, which is kind of hard in Unity because everything runs on main thread mainly. The only thing you can do on the background thread really easily is to load the scenes. So we have multiple scenes, so we can load them asynchronously and really just show them when they are ready. But there are some problems, actually. The crossing references, this is kind of hard to make in Unity, but we are using the framework called Zenject for dependency injection, and it makes this really simple. If you know how dependency injection framework works, this completely fixes any cross-scene references. Problem number 2 is that if you load the scene in Unity asynchronously, you just have no idea, or you can't specify a specific frame when the scene is activated. By activated, I don't mean setting it active. No. By activating, I mean that on all objects, the awake function is being called. So there's no way how to do it. We spend a lot of time. If someone knows how to do it, please let me know. And our solution for this is that all our scenes, which are on gameplay, have all the game objects disabled. Actually, they are just parented into one, and that parent is disabled. And when all the scenes are loaded, and we know they are active, we just turn them on during the one frame, and we know the game started at that frame. Yeah, the third problem is that when you want to play the game, you need to load a few more scenes, but that's kind of easy thing. We just created some menus over here and then. This is how it looks like. The other thing we are using a lot are scriptable objects, which are objects which can have a lot of data on them, and they are not actually part of the scene, so we use them for all the settings and all the stuff, but even for more things like events and variables. We actually have one variable which is just a scriptable object, and it's just a float, and if you change that value, you can do fading out and fading in of the scene. One of the best things we implemented is null checker, which just goes through everything in the game, every object, and it checks if we have any null references on those mono behaviors or scriptable objects, or even in prefabs, which makes things really easy to to debug.
Yeah. Also because we would like to use the UI heavily in the menu scenes, we would like to use it as easily as possible. And because previously we have been doing UI on the mobile when frameworks like UIKit exist and it's like perfect or almost perfect, we like to use the same types of API in our game. So we design our own view controllers and the stuff in the UI, and if possibly, we would like to use it also in the next project because we really perfect it, and it's easy to use. And even like modders, which we'll talk about later, when they like discovered it in our game, they really like it a lot. So maybe we should like release it as an open source or something like that.
Yeah, we also have editor in the game, of course. Everyone needs editor. And we have FLIF integrated, which is kind of must for all VR games if they want to support mixed reality. We were pretty lucky that we cooperated with FLIF guys because they are actually from Prague. And one of their employees actually works for us too. So this was a really nice collaboration. They actually made this video too. But let's continue with the story, because development was kind of not so problematic. But the most problematic thing was to release the game. You know, there's this button on the Steam. This is actually me releasing the game. I wanted to record that significant moment. And when I was pressing this button, nothing happened. People started writing me on Twitter like, what's happening? You should release the game at 7 and it's 7:30 and the game is still not out. So I went back to the Steam and I noticed another button which the label on the button was a release from early access. So I was like, okay, what can that mean? So I pressed it again. And so the game was in early access for exactly 4 minutes, which was maybe probably the shortest early access ever, but fortunately, guys from Valve were really fast and helped us to bring the game to early access because it's not possible to do it without them.
Yeah, and also it's like a good situation to experience because previously it was me who was handling all stuff on the Steam website, but at the moment of the release, me and my brother, we were like flying to Australia, to Sydney to present the game there, and Ján was maybe experiencing the Steam VR UI for the first time. So I would recommend at least have another person who understands everything on the store page.
Don't let me release your game.
Yes. Speaking about early access, maybe we should talk about this more. So since the beginning, we really wanted to release the game as complete as possible because like we don't want to have users to have the bad experience from not playing the final product. But just because so many positive feedback we experienced during the during the year of showcasing game around the world, people will keep telling us, please release the game. It's already finished. Just finish it. And that's why we decided to release the game as an early access. But really, since the beginning, we declared that the game will have like additional content added as an updates during the process. So normally, I think I would like advise against early access, but maybe for the game like Beat Saber, where the core gameplay is there since the day one, early access is the best way what could happen in the game because especially the game like Beat Saber, which can have like additional content from outside sources, is really good.
Yeah, so we released the game, and it went pretty well. It peaked on the second position of best-selling games worldwide. This is just the VR. Of course, it was top 1 in VR there, and it stayed there for I think like 4 months. And we sold about 50,000 copies in first week, which for VR is a really crazy number if you know how many VR devices are there on the market right now. And also, we were the best rated game on Steam, just before the Portal and Factorio, which is also a game. Woo! And but this didn't last so long because we pissed off some people, so we are going down right now. Yeah, and this is the graph of daily active users for VR games on May. Actually, crazy thing is that this number is still increasing, which is not a very common thing for paid game. So right now we have probably much more people than we have, daily active players than we have during this release period.
Why did it happen? Maybe we should talk about the modders or modding community. So we created the Beat Saber in Unity, and Unity is using the .NET and that kind of stuff. So if you release the game normally, anybody can like open the game like a book and decompile everything you have there, like assets, no problem, and especially code. So like a day or two after the release, the community figured out the format of the levels, and like some of them were pretty good programmers, so they released the mod for putting your own levels there. But which was even more like surprising. Some of the guys were working on the editor even before the game was released. So they just released the editor to the community, and from that moment, every single player of the game who bought the game, not only they have like the base package of songs, but pretty much from that moment they can put anything into the game. And right now I think the modding community people who are putting the custom content into the game, this is why the game is still alive and still healthy, and like Ján mentioned before, like the number of users playing the game is still like going up. Maybe I regret that moment that I already had this obfuscator thing ready, but I didn't push the button. Maybe I was lazy. Maybe I didn't want to do it, but because the game is like accessible to mod that game, and anybody can really have a taste of almost like full product even before we implement all those features we wanted to be in the game, and especially editor. Ján promised level editor like 1 week after the release when I was still in Australia. So
yeah, I feel like because they released this, and I was like, okay, we need our own editor released because they will just ruin the game with some crazy stuff. So I said, okay, we will release our editor in 1 week, and it's still not out yet. Because actually their editor is really cool, so we won't never make such a great editor. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. The great thing is that the community on the Discord is already more than 100,000 people are there on the Discord. They are self-managing all the stuff. They make tournaments. They make all of the stuff. Like they have a cooperation with HTC Vive and created this tournament with prizes and so on. And this is the most problematic thing. They also created a website called Beat Saber, which probably means this is saving the Beat Saber, and they are basically, they have a catalog of all the famous songs there with levels the community is making, which is absolutely illegal, of course, and we can't do anything about it. We actually might make it much harder for them, but we can't stop them.
But it's also like good for the users to have at least something available for them to play. For us as Beat Games, we would like to have these types of service available to our players, but with everything like solved legally, with all music being there without any like licensing issues. But of course it's like super hard, especially like music rights. It's 10 times more difficult than maybe like normal software rights. But maybe next year or something or something like that will happen, and we'll have that kind of service natively supported.
Originally we wanted to support YouTube and have some kind of integration into the game, but that's not a good idea. If you know how the audio shield, what happened to the audio shield, you know why. It's actually, they will just, at some point they will stop. So they will not allow you to do that.
Yeah. So during this year, after the release, after we have fun watching around the community, we had this pretty significant event, and that was E3, when like Sony invited us to showcase early demo of the Beat Saber on the PlayStation VR. It was really something we never like imagined. Me and Ján working on Beat Saber in 2016, we thought we maybe sell like 5,000 copies and that would be it. But like 2 years later, we were invited to biggest showcase even around the world, to LA, and show the Beat Saber there. So for me and for Jaroslav, who was there with me, it was really big experience. And if there will be a chance for us to showcase Beat Saber again, like the final version, that would be really cool. So thanks Sony for like bringing us there.
Yeah, and Sony also helped us with another thing, which is bundle, which will be out on 14th of December. So it's a good Christmas gift if you are looking for something.
Yeah, maybe about stuff which like we didn't know before. So on the Steam, when you release the game, there is option to put the ratings there, but nobody does that because it's stuff you don't want to do and you don't want to pay for it. But especially for products on the PS Store, every game has this types of ratings there, and you need to consider not even like this is ESRB for America, PEGI is for Europe, Korea has one, China has one, Japan has one, Australia has one. Everybody has their own rating, and you as a developer maybe don't know that those ratings are not cheap. And I don't remember exactly the value, but the price we paid for the ratings may be X times more that you as a small indie studio have as a budget for your game. So maybe just consider that if you need this rating, you would need additional resources for that.
Yeah. Another thing is that what I mentioned before, that right now we are going a little bit down on the reviews thing, and that's because of the modding community. They are so much used to those mods they created that every update we create just ruins all the mods basically. So when we update the game, they're just pissed on us, like you are breaking the game. Even if we are trying to improve a lot of stuff, like one thing we did last time was changing the Saber's position in the VR space. I moved it 3 centimeters further away from the controller because it matches the controller more precisely. And suddenly, like tons of people started saying on Reddit and all across the social networks that we ruined the experience, and now they can't play the game because I have no idea how they can feel.
They think the swords are shorter, but in reality, Ján make it longer. But I mean, the blade was longer. The overall length was the same, but
yeah. The thing which we should think about now is that don't change anything. If they like it, it's okay.
And also, like, consider another types of like bad reviews. One bad review is from guys who like write us, "Oh, you are ruining the game by releasing the updates." And another group of people are saying, "You abandoned the game. You haven't released the updates for I don't know how many weeks." So it's really like problematic to
do anything. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But fortunately, we also have this crazy thing which happened. And we have these machines selling in Asia where you can buy it for your arcade.
Arcades, yes.
Or cafe or restaurant or whatever, and put it there, and the Beat Saber is built on it, and it's without any supervising, right?
Yeah, and this is also something we never ever imagined would happen to us, like having our own like hardware arcade cabinet, Beat Saber being there, but so many things happened since the release, or even since the release of the viral video, that so many like parties contacted us and they want to do business with us, and this is one of the fruits of those things. So we are really happy that with our small game can be like accessible not only to like home users but also to people who don't have the VR hardware, don't even have the computers, but just want to go with their family or friends to the arcade store.
And so these were like really young people playing Beat Saber, and these are really old people playing Beat Saber. But what's most important for us is that Beat Saber is healthy. So if you want to feel really healthy and have a nice lifestyle, buy Beat Saber.
Ján just wanted to say that...
I just want to say this. And we are hiring, yeah. If you are a programmer or want to help us in any kind of way, please let us know, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Just, we are really happy what we achieved with this small product, and in the end, it's not just the game, like Ján showed in the previous videos, it's something like everybody can enjoy, and hopefully in the near future we can make it even more better and available on more places. So you can check it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there are any questions or okay, there's one question, but I'm not sure who has the mic. There's one mic here. Yeah, you
have a mic here.
Okay.
So first question from me probably, and how many people now on the team? How many of them doing QA?
So it was me and Ján who started Beat Saber as programmers, designers. Then we hired Jaroslav Beck, who created the soundtrack. And right now we also have like additional programmers. Misha is helping us with the marketing. And also it's really like a nice thing to say that we are using help of people from the community. They are helping us like
creating levels.
Creating levels, basically, which is, I think, great.
Thank you.
I have a question about your choosing the color scheme in the game. Is that more artistic choice, or is it about the comfort of the players?
Yeah.
Darker color set, basically.
It's a little bit artistic and somehow like also how we can play it better. Actually, I'm colorblind, so I have problems seeing red and green color. That's why there is red and blue.
Thank you for admitting that.
Here in front. Raise your hands. First row here.
If I remember correctly, you created your own music label?
Yeah, we have some kind of, we can call it a music label, yeah. So we are, right now, we're having artists which are releasing the music through the game, basically. Which means, yes, we are a music label right now.
So isn't that quite a lot of trouble? Why did you go this route? Or couldn't you license it through easier ways? Or?
I think this is more fair for everyone because there's a revenue share and we are not paying upfront for any music, which is really better. And
also regarding licensing music, is not that you are only dealing with one party. Usually one song can be that multiple parties owns several types of rights. So you need to negotiate the licensing with every single one of them. So having the artist under us, it's way easier for us to manage.
Yeah, actually there are some songs on the market which have like 16 publishers, which means if you want to have that song in the game, you have to talk to 16 different entities, which is really crazy.
Crazy.
Thanks.
Oh.
Hey, did you come into any contact with the holders of the Star Wars brand?
Fortunately not.
Fortunately, no. We actually never wanted to have any kind of thing which will look like lightsaber or something like that. Actually, our saber was a cube. It's not even round, but it might look like a lightsaber. But we also changed it because we never think this is the final thing we had. So right now the sabers are even more different than the lightsabers.
Yeah, and having lightsabers or laser sabers in our game is something which evolved naturally, because if you remember the original prototype video Ján showed earlier in the presentation, there was a model of the sword with the traditional blade. So you were cutting or you should cut the objects with your blade, but it's not easy for you to hold the saber, virtual saber, using the real controller, which doesn't really resemble the real handle. You can't really easily, for example, tweak it in your hand. That's why it's not easy to always cut with the blade, but with the laser sword, it doesn't matter. You just melt it from any direction. So having laser swords in our game is really convenient. It doesn't has to do with.
Yeah, it was just a solution how to make it play better and to match the visuals of the environment. So it was a natural selection. Okay. So I guess that's it. There's one more question there.
Hello, just a quick question. How was the overall length of the development? How long did it take you?
I think it was maybe 1.5 years.
So I think the first prototype was done around September-ish 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and then we have that break for 5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I guess that's it. So thank you very much, and see you next year.
Thank you for the presentation.